Hello, and welcome to SHRF's how-to videos. Today's video will be focusing on the lead reviewer responsibilities, which is the start of phase 2 in the peer review process at SHRF. So this step is when you will be reviewing your applications that have been assigned to you after you've completed phase 1 of the review, when you've identified any possible conflicts and your level of expertise for each application. The program manager from SHRF will send an email out notifying you when assignments have been assigned and when you can access them in the research management system. So you'll log into the system and it'll take you to the reviewer home, as we've previously discussed, and you'll scroll down to the review phases. So when you're a lead reviewer, you'll be assigned a full review form and specific applications where you'll either be a primary or secondary reviewer, and you'll have to give full comments, scores for each criteria, and then an overall score, which will then be submitted and discussed at the review meeting. So you'll click in here, and as you can see, for this committee, we have one assigned review form. You'll probably see around 5 or 6 depending on your assignment. And you'll go in and there'll be a list view, much like every other icon. It'll have the principal investigator, application ID, the type of grant. So if you are on more than one committee, you'll see the name of the grant listed here, scientific title, the activity type, so it's letting you know the review scorecard. So that's that full form that you'll be filling out. That this form is in draft right now, and then what your role is. So here you'll either see that you're the primary or the secondary reviewer. So you'll click open, and this is going to take you to the review form with the different tabs. Up top, you'll be able to download the review form if you'd like to, after you've completed this information, print it off so that you have it in preparation for the review meeting, or if you're downloading it to your computer so that you can read that. You'll just need to follow the instructions we have for then getting rid of this information appropriately after the review meeting is complete. The first tab you're going to see is the instructions. A nice little hint that we have over here is the jump to. So because you've completed phase 1, you would go straight to the phase 2 instructions. And then this gives you information regarding phase 2 and what needs to be completed and how the review form works, everything like that. So those are instructions. When you go into the application details, this is similar information that you would have seen at phase 1 when you were doing the level of expertise. It's just giving you who the principal applicant is and all of their co-applicants, along with the institution where funds will be held. But what is important is this View Application PDF button. When you click this button, it'll open up the application form, and this is where you would be, what you would be reading in order to complete the review. So as you can see, everything is in here, the full application. You'll see the RMS information first, and then budget, everything like that. And as you keep going through, everything will be in place, but you will have to do a bit of jumping back and forth when it comes to any kind of attachments. With our system, that is one thing, is that the attachments don't embed themselves right in there. But what we try to do is make it as logical as possible. So you'll see a signature page, and then it goes straight into project description, and then it goes into all of your other components too, depending on the application. And from there, you can print right from the window. You can download it to your computer, and all of the other buttons you usually have. So that's where you would find the application itself. And then here is where you find each of the high-level review criteria for when you're reviewing. These will obviously look different depending on which program you're reviewing for SHRF, but the forms will look very similar. So at the top, it's going to say the weight of this criteria. And then within the criteria, it'll have subpoints, as you can see right here. And what we've done, these are not mandatory, but we're hoping that they'll be helpful for you as a reviewer, is as you're working through these different subpoints and reading the application, you can identify that maybe the applicant had done very well when it came to the relevance of the proposed research addressing Saskatchewan Health, so you can give that an outstanding. But when it came to demonstration of the contextual need, it wasn't as strong in the application. It was okay, but it wasn't great, so you can do this. Again, this is purely just for your support. So that if you want, you can bring this forward to the meeting or as you're working through the review, but it will not, if you don't fill them out, this won't stop you from submitting. What is important and needs to be completed once you've done your reading is the criteria score and comments. So again, it reminds you that this criteria is worth 25% of the total overall score. The weighting is automatically going to be applied at your full score, so you don't have to worry about doing anything within this form. But what you'll need to do is first rate the application, and these ratings do relate back to what you give for score in the numerical sense. And that's all in the instructions to show you what our rating scale looks like. But again, it's to help you out in understanding and just to remind you when it comes to if you thought overall that this criteria was a 4, then 4 is considered to be excellent. And so you may do this, but it may be sometimes we don't always look at that. You might put outstanding and then give a 4, and that'll be something that'll come up as discussion in the review meeting. So I'm going to say this one was overall has an outstanding rating because it has a little asterisk. It is mandatory. I'm giving it a 4.8. You can see here that you can score anywhere between 0 and 4.9, and you could put up to 2 decimal places. So maybe you thought it was a 4.55. That will be allowed. If you were to put in another decimal place, the system will round that up automatically. So something to keep in mind. Something also to note is there may be instructions underneath each of these regarding specific information for that criteria. So just make sure you read those. And then you'll put in your comments regarding this part of the application and criteria. Again, this is mandatory, and we do request that reviewers give good feedback to our applicants, whether it's a strong application or one that needs work. This will, no matter what, help them as they move forward in their application process, both for this application and in the future. And you can see that you have 250 words in this space. So once that's complete, you'll want to hit Save Draft. This is to make sure you don't lose any of your work. And this is also when you hit Save Draft, you can then leave the scorecard at any time, and it'll save the information that you've completed and you don't have to submit right away. So you would do the same thing in the quality of proposal. As you can see, this one has sub points and then more points under that. Depending on the criteria, there's going to be a bit more information. Given this is related to proposal, that's why it's longer. But as I've mentioned, because there's no asterisk, this stuff isn't mandatory, but if you do find it helpful, please use it. And it comes back to the criteria, score, and comments. And as you can see, there's a jump to on each. So you can get, if you're not going to use these sub points, you do need to use them for review, but if you're not going to use the drop down, please go straight to criteria, score, and comments and complete the same thing. Give it an excellent. That technically isn't an excellent, but that's okay. And then you would put comments in here again. So wherever there's an asterisk, you'll need to fill it out. And then, as mentioned, hit Save Draft. So we'll do one more here. Again, as you can see, the form looks the same. And then you can go straight to criteria and scoring, fill in your information, and then hit Save Draft. And then when you get into the overall, what this is it has a couple different spots for comments, and these comments are have different purposes. Then there's an overall rating and then your initial score. So I'll start with the comments. If it doesn't have an asterisk, it isn't mandatory. But what this does is gives you a space if you want to communicate with the program manager or highlight something to SSHRF that doesn't need to be specifically discussed at the review, but it's something just to keep in mind with the application that you may have seen regarding if there was maybe some budget adding errors, just so that we can keep that in mind, because that would be something if an application was funded, we would then work with the applicant to rectify that issue. Or if there was any kind of ethics concerns that aren't so great that the application shouldn't be funded at that time, but is something that should be pointed out and may then be something that we have to have the applicant complete prior to funding being released. Then there's the overall comments to applicants. This is the only one out of these three that will go to the applicant. That's why it's mandatory. And this is to just kind of summarize everything that you've done in these three criteria. So this has to be filled in, otherwise you will not be able to submit your form. And then finally, there's also the overall comments to the review committee. So this is information, whether you have, maybe when you were reviewing it, there were specific questions or considerations that you would like to bring forward to the review committee. These will be reviewed by the chair and the program manager, just to make sure that they're still relevant to the review, or if that's something that may need to be discussed just between yourself and the chair, just in case, so that we can make sure that the comments that come forward to review fit within the application and within our review criteria. But again, not mandatory. This will not go to the applicant. Finally, you'll give it an overall rating, which here, again, it should relate back to what your initial score is, but you may find that your initial score didn't add up. Like, you think it's an excellent application, so you'll put it there. This does then align it within the excellence, but maybe you had thought it was an outstanding application, but your score only gave it excellent. You can either leave it there and we can have that discussion at the committee meeting, or you may go back and kind of review your comments and scores again. But as you can see, the score is automatically calculated and the weights are automatically applied. If you do not see this score, it's probably because you haven't hit Save Draft. So please hit the Save Draft button and then the score will show up. So I'm going to hit Save Draft again, so all of this saves. And now that I'm completed all of this, it's the initial review deadline, so phase 2 deadline, or maybe just before, but I feel good about my review. I'm happy with the work I've done. I'm going to submit it. We do make sure we give you a warning, because once you submit, you'll no longer be able to do any kind of edits to the review form. If at any time you hit submit by accident and then you hit the yes button and then afterward you're like, oh, maybe I should have updated this, or I've thought of this, just contact SSHRF at helpdesk@sshrf.ca and we'll be happy to help. But at this time, I'm feeling good. I'm going to hit yes. And now my review form is submitted. And as you can see, everything is locked down and I can no longer make any changes. Just for your reference, when you do go back to your reviewer home and you go back to the review form, you'll see that it is still here. So you'll be able to access your review comments at any time in preparation for the review meeting. And it will be in the activity status of submitted. Just so you know, so then that way you'll know that I've completed this one, but maybe I have a one below that'll then be in draft. So just something to keep in mind about that list view. And that is completing your review form as lead reviewer.